Hello, welcome to our ongoing study of the book of Daniel. And today we are in Daniel chapter 3. And again, a reminder of where we've been in the first two chapters, that the Babylonians have taken captive the people of Israel, uh, and they've brought in among them Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who are able to reach significantly high levels within the Babylonian Empire. They are put through this training process, this internship's not the right word, but they are kind of put through this training camp type experience. And they see God's hand of faithfulness at work. But now we come to chapter 3, and things begin to get interesting for these four friends in particular. So, Daniel chapter 3, starting at verse 1, where it says, King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its breadth 6 cubits. So, in our terminology, it's about 90 feet tall. So, if you think about a baseball field, it would, if you were to lie this statue down, it would go from home plate to first base or any base that you pick. It would take up that entire span, and it was about 9 feet wide. So, a rather large statue that Nebuchadnezzar makes. And it says he set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon, so just outside of the city proper. Verse 2, then King Nebuchadnezzar sent together the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. So he's having a huge grand opening, ribbon cutting of this statue. And so he invites all of the movers and shakers in Babylon, all of the people of significance, all the people of high office. In verse 3, then the satraps, the prefects, and the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the justices, the magistrates, and all the officials of the provinces gathered for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. And the herald proclaimed aloud, You are commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. So, not only does he build this huge golden statue that people are to worship and pay homage to, but now there's this cue that when you hear music being played, whether it be a horn or pipe or all these other instruments, when you hear music played, you are to fall down on your face on the ground to pay homage, to worship, to revere the statue that Nebuchadnezzar has built. Verse 6, whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. So this is more than likely referring to a furnace that would have been used either in the process of making bricks or smelting down a variety of metals. Obviously, we've got this statue fashion, probably put in some different metals, melted them down so that they could shape it into this statue. So it's believed that these furnaces were probably about the size for several people to walk inside of. So rather large furnaces used for these purposes. Now, this is going to become important in just a minute. So, verse 7, therefore, as soon as all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, all the peoples, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and maliciously accused the Jews. They declared to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, unsure where Daniel is at this point. Maybe he was somewhere else, and these particular people didn't see Daniel to include him in this bunch, but only in this case, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are in question. These men, O king, pay no attention to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in furious rage, commanded that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be brought. So they brought these men before the king. So this phrase, furious rage, really talks about a violent anger. So he is viscerally angry that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, these young men that he has raised up to serve as officials, that they have disregarded his command. Everything that they've done for these three has been to indoctrinate them into the ways of Babylonian culture, even to the point of changing their names to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they refuse to submit to the king's decree that they're to bow down and worship this image. And so he loses it. And he answered and said to them in verse 14, "Is it true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up? Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" So, a couple of things here. First of all, it's interesting that he doesn't immediately sentence them to the fiery furnace upon hearing the allegations. He gives them an opportunity. He gives them a second chance to say, we're going to do this again. And maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you didn't hear clearly, but when you hear the music, I need you to bow down and worship this image. But if you don't, then you'll be cast into the burning fiery furnace. And the end of verse 15 is really significant, where he says, "And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands?" Now, again, because Babylon they overtook Assyria, they took all of the Assyrian captives to themselves. So now for Babylon, as we've said before, when one nation goes to war with another, the understanding was that it wasn't just the two nations fighting, it was the God of Babylon versus the God of Assyria. It was the God of Assyria versus the God of Israel. And so Nebuchadnezzar is getting a little cocky here, saying that me and my gods, we've already defeated your God. And the proof of that is that you're here in captivity right now. If your God was so powerful as to help you, you wouldn't be in captivity. So he is calling into question the character of God, believing that God is unable to help them or deliver them in this situation. But verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace." I love their faith. Now, they have no assurance from God that he would rescue them, that he would protect them, that he would keep them from being put to death here. But they simply say that our God is able. We don't have to answer your question because we're not going to bow down to it. We are faithful to Yahweh, and Yahweh is more than able to save us. And they continue in end of verse 17, "He will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." So they come with the faith, saying that we believe if we're faithful to God, he is going to somehow miraculously intervene for us, protect us, deliver us. But even if he doesn't, it doesn't change anything. Even if he chooses to not deliver us from the fiery furnace, we'd rather die than violate our covenant with God, to violate our relationship with God. If he chooses to let us perish, then so be it. So we come to verse 19. Then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with fury, and the expression of his face was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So it's kind of like those previous verses, the fact that Nebuchadnezzar is giving them an out, giving them a second chance. There's almost a softness, an affection for them, not wanting to put them to death. But when they stand firm in saying, we are not changing our minds, we'd rather die being faithful to God than to be unfaithful to God and worship the image that you have set up, his face changes. It goes from maybe compassion or any kind of softness to now he's hardened. And he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated. Now, I'm going to pause here for just a second because I want to be clear about this because I'm about to get myself in trouble. The furnace was not heated to 7 times its normal temperature. You say, but that's what the text says, and you're saying that's not what happened. Hear me out. Now, we often use phrases like, we take the Bible literally. And that's true, but I think we need to understand what that phrase means. We take the Bible literally in what it's trying to communicate, okay? Which means that we do need to understand the background. We need to understand what's being said. Now, you might say, well, that's just opening up to make the Bible say whatever you want. And I understand that. But at the same time, to take scripture seriously and to take it literally, we need to understand what's being said. And here's why I say that. If it's true that this fiery furnace, and you'd say, why else would they have massive fiery furnaces? Again, more than likely to melt down metals, to fire bricks. So the temperature needed for those kind of furnaces would be about about 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. So you take a furnace that normally, pardon me a moment, that normally is burning at 2000 degrees Fahrenheit, extremely hot. If you were to increase that 7 times to make it 14,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, this is a nuclear kind of heat. This is hotter than lava. This is the surface of the sun, literally. It's hotter than the surface of the sun, hot. Now, do I believe that Nebuchadnezzar had a furnace capable of being hotter than the surface of the sun? No, I don't. You couldn't go, I mean, there's no way you could even begin to approach it and not immediately die. So 2000 degrees, you still have to keep a good distance lest you die. So what does this mean that he ordered the furnace heated 7 times more than it was usually heated? Now, they're in Babylon, but this is written, Daniel, this is written from a Jewish perspective. The number 7 for ancient Jewish people was a number of completeness, wholeness, abundance. So what is Nebuchadnezzar saying? Is Nebuchadnezzar saying, these furnaces run at 2000 degrees, I want them running at 14,000 degrees? You can't do that. That there's nothing he could do to get that fire that hot. I think what Daniel's communicating from the decree of Nebuchadnezzar is kind of a hyperbolic, I want this as hot as you can possibly make it. Okay, so did it reach 14,000 degrees? I highly doubt it. I mean, again, that's surface of the sun hot. I think using 7 is a picture of complete fullness, like take this as hot as you can go. You know, whatever is involved in getting this to maximum temperature, you do that. And so maybe from 2000 to 3000, I don't know, that's still incredibly hot. At 2000 degrees, you are still looking at immediate and very quick death if you throw a human being into that. So I hope that makes sense. I don't want that misunderstood or taken out of context. Do I believe that this happened? Yes. Do I believe we take scripture literally? Yes. But literal in terms of what it's saying. I don't think this verse is suggesting an actual temperature. I think this is a hyperbolic language of complete and total, make this as hot as humanly possible. Okay, I want to be clear about that. So that's 7 times more than was usually heated. Maybe Nebuchadnezzar said that, but he's not getting that heat. I think it's more communicated from Jewish language to say he ordered it fired up to as hot as they can possibly get it. Okay, he wanted to make sure they died and died quickly and completely. Okay, so If you have questions about what I just said, because I know at face value it can sound controversial, please let me know. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. But yes, take scripture seriously. It's our authority. We take it literally, but we literally take it to mean what it was meant to communicate. And I don't think Nebuchadnezzar was looking at a specific temperature number. I think he was ordering complete, total, abundant heat, as hot as they could possibly make it. Hopefully that's clear and makes sense. So, verse 20, and he ordered some of the mighty men of his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their cloaks, their tunics, their hats, and their other garments, and they were thrown into the burning fiery furnace. I mean, this is almost comical that they throw them, let's say it stayed at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, or let's say it went up to 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. You throw a person in there and they're dying fast. Okay, that they're not surviving this. But it's like he's trying to make them even more flammable. Kind of like he wants them to catch fire before they even enter the furnace by wrapping them up in cloaks, tunics, hats, garments. He's putting them in all of this flammable material before casting them into the furnace, as if to just maximize the suffering and the death they would endure. But verse 22, because the king's order was urgent and the furnace overheated, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay, so even getting within 10 to 12 feet of this kind of furnace, there would be severe burns, toxic gases. So in order to get Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego into the furnace, these mighty men have to get them. I mean, you can't just like chuck them from a distance. You've got to carry them to the edge and put them in. And in so doing, you're breaking that 10 to 12 foot safety barrier. Even these guards die from the intensity of the heat. But verse 23, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell bound into the burning fiery furnace. So what we'd expect, I mean, even the guards who threw them in died from getting that close to the fire. So by this point, you've also got Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego bound in cloaks and tunics and hats and garments. They should immediately go up in a blaze. So they're cast into the furnace. Verse 24, then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished and rose up in haste. He declared to his counselors, did we not cast three men bound into the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. He answered and said, but I see four men unbound, walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the appearance of the fourth is like a son of the gods. Oh, to have been there to see that, from whatever perch Nebuchadnezzar is looking down into the furnace, he can see in that fire not only Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, no longer bound. I mean, that the bonds have clearly burnt off, but they're just walking around. We said before that this furnace was big enough to hold several people walking around. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in this fire, 2,000, 3,000 degree fire, unscathed, but there's a fourth person in the fire. And Nebuchadnezzar says the appearance of that fourth person is like a son of the gods. There's something about this fourth person that is distinct from the other three. Okay, whether it's his size, something glowing about him, something about his appearance set him apart as a son of the gods. Now, I don't want to say most, but the argument would be that this is a pre-incarnate manifestation of Jesus. Now, that gets tricky, and some people struggle with that. But you will see throughout the Old Testament, and you can do this study for yourself to kind of see where this appears. We will see in the Old Testament references to an angel of the Lord. An angel of the Lord appears to this person. An angel of the Lord appears to that person. But we also see not an angel of the Lord, we see many references to the angel of the Lord. And it's interesting how the angel of the Lord is treated, how people respond to the angel of the Lord. And the argument is that when you see the angel of the Lord, I mean, when Jacob wrestles with God, he wrestles the angel of the Lord. So go through the Old Testament and look for those references to the angel of the Lord, not an angel, but the angel of the Lord. And it's more than just an ordinary angel. And so, again, the argument would be that this is some type of pre incarnate manifestation of Jesus, which would then be who this likely is in this fire with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So, verse 26, then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the burning fiery furnace. He declared, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out from the fire, and the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's counselors gathered together and saw that the fire had not had any power over the bodies of those men. The hair of their heads was not singed, their cloaks were not harmed, and no smell of fire had come upon them. They don't even smell. I mean, you even sit near a campfire, just a tiny little campfire, and you smell like that smoke. Not even a smell of the smoke is on them. I love that little detail. Verse 28, Nebuchadnezzar answered and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants, who trusted in him and set aside the king's command, and yielded up their bodies rather than serve and worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree, any people, nation, or language that speaks anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses laid in ruins, for there is no other God who is able to rescue in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So a significant breaking point or humbling point for Nebuchadnezzar. Now you might say, wow, this is amazing what happens to Nebuchadnezzar. But we're forgetting at the same time that Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon at this point are polytheistic. We saw that back in chapter 1 with the introduction of a couple of their gods, that they had several different gods that they worshiped. And so Nebuchadnezzar here is not converting to the worship of Yahweh. He is simply adding Yahweh to the mantle of all of the other gods that they worship. And he decrees that no one's to say anything against Yahweh, the God of Israel. So I think that's an important distinction to make, because we even can fall victim to that sometimes with you hear missionaries talk. Sometimes in some countries, people will say, "Yes, I'll worship Jesus," and we celebrate. That sounds great, but what if you look behind the scenes? What's happening is they're simply adding Jesus to a council of other gods that they also worship. It's not an exclusive devotion to Christ. It's Jesus among many gods. And that's what's happening with Nebuchadnezzar. This isn't a conversion moment for Nebuchadnezzar. It's simply an acknowledgement that there is a God who should be worshiped and respected and not spoken evil of. And so Yahweh is given a place among all of the other gods who were worshipped among the Babylonians. So amazing story of the faithfulness of God to three faithful men, and how miraculously appearing to them and delivering them from this, and the way that God blesses them, that they are promoted in their roles among the Babylonians. So just continue to see the faithfulness of God. We saw back in chapter 2. So in chapters 1 and 2, we saw how they were given the opportunity to not eat of the Babylonian foods, to stay true to the Jewish dietary customs. God blesses that. Chapter 2, we see nobody can help Nebuchadnezzar with his dreams, but Daniel comes without any assurance from God and says, well, I can't, but God can. And God responds to that favor by giving him the interpretation of the king's dream. And now chapter 3, we see a third instance of a miraculous act of faithfulness from God for these three men who refused to bow down to this golden image. So, seeing three powerful and exciting examples of the faithfulness of God for his people, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So, pray that this will be an encouragement to us to believe that God is able to do the impossible, to believe that God can show himself faithful, even when we don't see any rational, reasonable explanation. They didn't stand a chance when Nebuchadnezzar ordered them into the fiery furnace, but God came through in a big way. And I pray that this encourage our hearts to trust God even more. So thanks for checking in here on chapter 3, and we'll meet back again next week for Daniel chapter 4. God bless you.